was a very intuitive, very sensitive child. And I had a lot of interesting, anomalous, unexplainable experiences that didn't make any sense. And I wasn't raised in a family that was nurturing intuition and these types of things that were occurring. So I would just let it go. When my first contact experience that I remember, I was in middle school, and there were these light formations out the window of our apartment. We lived in Waterford, and there were 3 triangles in the sky, huge, big triangles, and they were big pulsing orbs of light at each point of the triangle. So there were 9 pulsing lights. And I watched them for over an hour, and they were shifting. Like one light would go over here, and then this one would go over here. So we called the local airport. We live by Pontiac Airport. They said they had nothing on radar. There was nothing. There's no air show in the sky or anything like that. I didn't really consider that anything till I got older and I got involved in this work, that I started looking back on that, and I just thought, wow, okay, that might have been something there. But lots of things had happened all the way into my 20s. I started having these interesting experiences of being on spaceships. I had beings that were coming into my room. I had over and over, I would be suspended from my bed. I wouldn't be able to move. Communication would be happening telepathically. What I believe I was taken, I don't know if I was taken physically or energetically, I don't know, but there was some period of time there where a lot of activity was occurring. And the last time that I had a visitation, there were 3 beings in my room. They were 3 different ones, and they were standing at the foot of my bed, all kind of faced towards me, no expression. And I was saying, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore, please stop. I just did, you know, I don't know what's going on, but I got to get up in the morning, and I don't know what's happening. And one of them came in front of me. There was information exchange between us, and then they just went like this. And I don't know if that's supposed to kind of mute the memory of it.
Okay.
I don't remember the details, but that was the last time that I had such an experience like that. But I was in my mid-20s, and I was singing like a bird to all my friends, but you know, nobody was really listening. They just thought I was crazy. I would see lights, I would see sparkles in my rooms, moving swirls of light. I would see energies like crazy. I still couldn't talk to anyone about it. No one knew. I talk all the time. It's okay. Like I'm comfortable with my strange experiences, but I just didn't have anybody, a mentor, anyone to kind of help me with what that was. So, you know, I file that, I get married, I have kids, I go through all of that. And I was all along doing yoga. I started practicing yoga about 21 years old, and I practiced all different types of yoga, into consciousness development. I loved all that stuff. It wasn't until I got a divorce. My oldest, I have 2 daughters, and I watched the Dr. Greer Sirius documentary in 2013, and I just felt like something opened up inside of me. Here's some people that are talking about truth. I just felt like, oh my God, they're using consciousness, they're making contact. I even went to a tea leaf reader one time, just on a whim for fun, and the girl looks into the cup, and she looks at me and she goes, "You're from an alien race out there." And I've never said that to anyone before. And I start laughing at her because I'm like 25 years old. I'm like, what? You know, how bizarre is that? You know, well, later on, I'm like, well, maybe that wasn't so bizarre. There's some connection that I was having to something that wasn't on this planet. So now I'm watching Dr. Greer. He's working with meditation, and he's making contact with the extraterrestrial civilizations. And I literally, Grant, I don't know how to really explain the feeling of, I saw myself doing it. I saw myself standing next to him. I saw myself outside at night looking at the stars with people. I knew that this was a path that I was going to follow. And there was no logic behind that. That's the crazy thing. There's no logic for me. I don't like bugs. I don't like to be cold. I was afraid of the dark. Like, there's all these things, you know. I like to be in bed at 10 o'clock at night. I like
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
I'm a morning person, you know. Oh my God, what am I doing? And it was just a few short months after that that I found out that there was a small training in Joshua Tree Retreat Center by a guy named Martin Ellis. He was a part of a group called Serper in, I think, the UK. He had trained under Greer, but he was doing his thing over there. He was coming here for the first time, and he was doing a 3-day event. It was relatively reasonably priced, so I went out there. And my friends are like, what are you doing? You're going to go and look for aliens, and you don't know anybody out there? Please be safe. Right? So I go out there, and the whole weekend, like the first day, I saw a being on the ground watching me.
Wow.
And I looked at it, and I looked away, I looked at it, I did it several times, and then I tapped the person next to me, I go, look over there, and we both looked, and it was gone. And that was the first day. And Martin, he took me for a walk into the desert, and he sat me down next to the bush where I saw it, and he left. Now, mind you, afraid of the dark, right? Now we're in the desert, there's scorpions, there's, you know, spiders, who knows what's out there. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God. And so that was day one, and I relaxed. Everything released. I let go of the fears. And then the next night we were talking about, has anyone ever been on a spaceship? And I'm like, nobody's talking. Here we go. I'll tell you my story. And after that, that evening, Martin comes over to me, and he says, thank you so much for sharing that. He says, you described it exactly the way I've experienced it for years.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, God, maybe I'm fitting in somewhere in this world. This is really strange. So the third night was what was really significant. We did a lot of exercises during the day to build cohesion with each other energetically. The third night, we go into the desert about a mile out from the retreat center, and the energy was really different. And I had this feeling as I'm walking around that everything's conscious. Everything is alive. Everything has awareness to it on some level. Mm-hmm. And we sit in this circle. We do the protocols. It was probably 2 in the morning, maybe 2:30. I'm watching the Pleiades star system, and you know, they're very twinkly and beautiful to look at. It's way off in the distance. And as I'm watching it, I begin to see this kaleidoscope, sort of like you know, when those kaleidoscopes are circular in shape. It was like a pinpoint of light that was moving towards our group, and I could see like sacred geometry in there and colors, and it was coming towards us. And then it would stop, and then I would look at it again, and it would do it again, and I would see these little drips of light coming down. It happened for a while, so you have to sit there with yourself and go, all right, am I creating this? Is this some weird light phenomena, you know? And so I finally mentioned it to the group, and other people were seeing it too. And as we're observing it, and then we go back to kind of chit-chatting, but I'm still watching. Well, all of a sudden, within about a half hour, there were 6 orbs of light that came out from that area that were not the stars. They were in a random position at first. They popped out. All of a sudden, we were starting, oh, there's one, oh, there's 2. Hey, I see another one. So we're all engaged in seeing this. Shortly after 6 came out, they moved into a hexagon shape. So they went into a shape, held that position till we went to bed. But I went off into the desert. I took a walk, and I sat down in a spot, and I was singing a prayer in Sanskrit. And I had my eyes fixed on one of them. And I was opening my heart and sending love and just trying to make that connection and asking for it to come closer. I really wanted to have a one-on-one experience. But it was about 4:30 at this point, and I was getting dragged out of the sand because everybody was leaving the next day. And I didn't know. I didn't even know these people. And I'm like, oh, I'm not leaving till the following morning. So I was going to stay at the retreat center on Sunday by myself. So everybody leaves in the morning, and I decide, it's an evening, I took a nap by the fountain. I was so tired. And, you know, being so afraid of snakes and all those creepy things, I took a hike by myself out back into the contact site from the night before. There were floodplain warnings coming out on my phone. It was dusk. and there was thunderstorms off in the distance in the mountains. It was a little creepy out there. But I went out and I went to our site and I sat down in the sand and I closed my eyes and I was meditating. And when I opened my eyes, what I saw was a massive orb in front of me. There was two of them actually. And then a little teeny one. There was a little one up on top. But they were right in front of me. It almost looked like a plasma, like a jellyfish was in front of me. It was opaque, but translucent at the same time. And I sat there admiring and being sort of in awe of what I was seeing. I didn't know what I was seeing, but I knew that I was having an experience of some sort. And so I closed my eyes again, I meditated, opened my heart. I wanted to stay out of fear. You know, when you're alone and you're having an experience, there's sort of a threshold that you can get to real quick that gives you that fight or flight mechanism. Like, I'm not sure if I should stay here. I stayed with it about maybe 10, 15 minutes. I thanked the intelligence of whatever it was that was with me. And then I got up and I called my daughter at home. She was still probably 8 years old. And I just needed to hear her voice to ground me, right? And so I walked away. Now, that stayed with me for months. I was integrating that experience, not even thinking how brave it was just to go out there by myself like that. But that was my first weekend doing contact training. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that this was where I needed to be. There was tremendous growth and adventure and just to be had through this. So I came home, and the following year in August, I went back out with Dr. Greer. I did a week training at Joshua Tree National Park with him. And then I came back and did a 3-day contact event with a guy that I partnered up with. 28 people attended. We co-led a weekend to educate people on it. And then I went back in January or February for the Vero Beach expedition. And that's where I met Marcel. And he was here from Hamburg. He's 20 minutes away from my house. It's a small world, right? Yeah. That's where we had the twin ship sighting there. That was the beginning of the Unacknowledged movie. Dr. Greer was orating.
So tell me about that. Were you involved in that?
In what?
In that double sighting, that double ship thing.
The twin ship. Yeah, I was assisting Dr. Greer that week.
Okay, so tell me about that, because I mentioned that when I was talking to people at Mount Shasta. A lot of people on the outside will say, the Greer thing, and nothing. Nobody ever sees anything there. And what surprised me when I was talking to people at Mount Shasta is, oh yeah, I've been there. Like, oh yeah. So tell me your experience in terms of what you saw when that happened.
Yeah. So the twin ship sighting, that was amazing. It was about the third or fourth night, and we just did a meditation. We came into circle, did the puja, and the first thing Dr. Greer does, he wants us to meditate 1 to 2 hours a day on our own. And he wants to know if anyone got any messages or insights or visions or anything, so everybody gets to share. Well, he pulls out his stone after we shared, and he says, this is my favorite crystal that I keep with me, and I put my intentions for contact and the disclosure movement and everything. Like, he puts it in there, and he goes, and I want everybody to hold this stone. Wow. And put their intentions in there. And he hands me the stone. I was right next to him. He hands it to me. And I'm holding the stone, and literally within the minute that I started holding the stone, there was a pin dot of light coming out just over the horizon. And all of a sudden it began to expand, and it had sort of a pulsating light. I'm sure you've seen the video of it. It was 9:05 p.m. It was dark out. It was the end of January. We were facing east. The sun had set in the west a long time ago. The stars were out. There were no ships on the water. There was no aircraft in the sky, which was amazing because you learn the flight patterns as you sit out at night, right? And there was nothing in the sky for this 5 minute, or I don't know, 7 minutes that this sighting occurred. This pin dot of light came out. We had 2 sets of military grade night vision goggles. People were observing. There was no smoke, there was no glare. There was no glare on the water, but these things were the size of a setting sun.
Wow.
All right. So if there was a boat out there, or if a military craft was out there instigating some sort of maneuver, we would have seen them. We had military grade goggles,
Yeah.
vision goggles, and we had Sony AS7 just came out, and it was the first time outside of the military that we had night vision in full color.
Wow.
Daniel Dahan had his camera there, and we had Jacques from France. He had his high-tech equipment. We had all these different people documenting at the same time what was happening. Well, and then we had people sitting in front of the cameras. So we had people there. You want to have things in there so you can not disprove that we made it up. So that went on for about a minute, and then all of a sudden another pin dot of light came out of nowhere, and it began to expand. So now we had two glowing orbs, pulsing orbs of light, like the size of two setting suns, with zero glare on the water. A flare is designed to put glare down so that to give people a way to move, right? I mean, so I'm not versed in military glare or flares, so I don't know what all their capabilities are. But we had several people calling the military base, the air, the local airports. They checked the I don't know if there's a Navy port there, but everything was thoroughly checked out to try to make sure it wasn't anything else than what we thought it was. But what happened is when it got released to Facebook, nobody called us, nobody asked us to give us our account. Marcel has all the still he's got tons of photographic work from that event that we've analyzed. We've blown up every picture to analyze everything around that we could. But nobody checked in with us to verify this at all. But I know the guy that does the video analysis for MUFON checked it out, and within a day he called them flares and everybody went home. Right? It's like, and I was heartbroken. I'm like, I was there.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it was amazing. But, Dr. Greer can be a target for a lot of communities in the UFO business. And unfortunately, I mean, there's still people that, I don't know if Mark D'Antonio, I think he was the one that did the research on it, but I don't know if he's ever had his own contact experience before.
Yeah.
He may be coming strictly from the scientific model of it doesn't fit into this, this, or this, so it's got to be that, and you're done.
Especially when you're talking about no flare, no reflection on the water, because I had my experiences in 1976. I remember being within 50 feet of one of these objects, and the weirdest thing about it was sitting along the edge of a bridge, and it was that far from the edge of the bridge, and it didn't light up the bridge. And I can still to this day remember, I'm going, why is it not lighting up? It's so bright, and yet it didn't light up the bridge. It was this, and we called it a dead light. It was like it was an intense light, but it didn't light up anything. So I can see what you're saying when you say that there was no reflection off the water. That it resembles what I saw.
Yeah. Well, Marcel and I had an opportunity last spring. I think it was a year ago this past spring. We got invited to speak at MUFON, Michigan MUFON. Okay. The state director, Bill Konkoleski, reached out to me and asked me if we would come and speak about CE5 and human initiated contact. And I said, absolutely. And we had an hour and a half to 2 hours to talk. At 3.5 hours, wow. We finally had to stop, and we still hadn't finished the whole thing, but we had the opportunity to put the video footage up there of that particular event and give our analysis of it. Yeah. Now, the chief field investigator of Michigan and Illinois, he came up to me and started asking me questions about Kundalini and working with the energy. Yeah. And he was so moved. I don't remember what exactly was said, but he started coming to my classes for about a year. He drove across the state to come to my 75-minute class every week because he really wanted to understand this consciousness piece more and to develop it within himself. And so Daniel was just fantastic. And I told Daniel, I said, we need to open up this case and we need to put all of our input about the twin ship sighting into that file so that we at least have a voice on that one, because I don't think that one got a fair shake.
Yeah. I agree. That's why I wanted to get the various people like you who had been to the event
Yeah.
to present the other side of the story. Because I hear the same thing where they're saying nothing's happened. And it's like, well, no, if you actually talk to the witnesses, they'll say
Yeah.
not only did something happen, but it was really spectacular.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What you mentioned consciousness. Link in consciousness for me now. Like, how do you? Because that's a big part to me, and I had an experience that sort of led me there. But what do you say about consciousness in terms of how does this fit into what we're looking at? Because most people see aliens, they just think it's aliens. They're flying here in little tin ships, and so link consciousness to this whole thing.
I know, right? Well, we're going to have an experience with this phenomena based on where we're developed, based on what we understand, right? And the way that we're interpreting it through our lens. Because you can't interpret something beyond what you're able to perceive, if that makes any sense. That's why when you sit in a group and everybody has an experience, it's going to be a little different. So it's really unique to the individual. The one thing that really captivated me when, after working with Dr. Greer for a little while and doing this work, I got involved in Kundalini maybe 5 years ago. And it was a personal reason. I was having a year or everything was falling apart. The relationship's bad, the finances were bad. My mom was dying. She was very ill and ready to die. And I was just at a place where I needed to shift from where I was. And I reached out to a woman a Kundalini yoga teacher in Tennessee. And she said, I'm going to give you a Kriya, which is a set of exercises that you're going to do, and a meditation for 40 days. I want you to do it. And so I did it. And it was to heal the mother wound and to change my energy field. Okay. Because we all have an electromagnetic field, right? And it can be more contained within us, or it can be really expanded. It's something that you can't touch, but you can feel it. You know, when somebody has a big field of energy around them, they walk into the room, you're like, whoa, you know, and sometimes we're drawn to that. Sometimes we're pushed away. That's all energy. What I realized through this 40 days was that if I learn how to amplify my energy and make it really, really strong, that I have the power and the ability to project my words and my intentions into the world in a whole new way, but it also protects me from those wavering influences and those negative things out there, right? It can't penetrate me. I want to be in my place of power. So it allowed me to heal from the mother wound. Everything in my life shifted around because it's all energy at the end of the day. And I realized this is unbelievably transformative and everybody needs to do this. So that began my path, and I decided to take teacher training. When it comes to contact and CE5, so everybody's going to these Greer events, everybody's looking at contact, oh my God, I want to do this, this is amazing. But then you have a lot of people drawn to it that have no understanding of how to meditate, what consciousness even is, or how to work with their energy. Okay, so they're excited, they're curious, but they don't know how does Dr. Greer do it? How does this person do it? What are they doing, right? And so I took a strong interest in creating what I call the daily practice outline for CE5 for contact to develop those skills from a very foundational level. And that's working with breath work, doing the mantra, and meditating, and possibly journaling each day if you feel inspired. Because we are able as energetic beings to attract the circumstances in our lives that we want to experience. You really we have this illusion that we're going out into the world to have things and do things and create things, but ultimately when you're in your power and you're in your field in a strong way, you're really magnetizing those experiences and those people to you. And that's what I call the flow. All right, so I created the daily practice outline for CE5, and you know, a lot of people, oh, that's exciting, that's great, but then they just don't do it. You know, who's going to take that next step to actually put a breath exercise into practice every day to test it out to see how it affects you, right? So I began to realize through the Kundalini practice, becoming a teacher and working with people, that ultimately the most important thing that we're all doing here is supporting massive change on the planet to higher consciousness. And the way that we're going to achieve that is through the heart, right? Through love, through unity, not separation. We have institutions. Everything outside of us is a manifestation of where our ego is. And we come here to have an experience of separation, but it's really manifested in the world as everything is separate. And we're separate from each other, and there's a lot of division amongst our own people to create more separation. And so this movement, and where it is in my heart and soul, is that we're moving towards a community of heart-centered people who want to evoke positive, loving change in the world for the future of our own children. Now, the beautiful thing is the consciousness of the younger generations is more advanced than we are, and they're coming in open in a different way to handle that next wave. But we're sort of on that frontier right now, and I feel that contact work is the perfect vehicle for people coming in that are interested and open to it, to developing their consciousness, developing higher states of awareness and being in the world so that you can be that warrior, dynamic human. Ultimately, if I think about this a step further, to have open communication with extraterrestrial civilizations, we need to elevate that consciousness within ourselves. We need to elevate our frequencies. They already are advanced civilizations. We're rising up so that we find that common ground. So by doing these basic Kundalini practices, we're elevating our frequency, strengthening our field and our intuitive abilities so that we're finding the common ground with them. So that's why I say when we're in circles, some people are going to see the ship, see the lights, see the energies, the orbs, feel the experiences that they're having, and some people not so much. And it's okay. It's all good as long as we're all, being expanded and we feel the love. That's great. But if people want to take it seriously and take that next step, there's more that we can be doing, not only to be a better human, but to be a better ambassador for that next step.
Yeah. And you led us through some exercises at the 2019 Mount Shasta event. And I think that's what maybe people, because a lot of people are now watching Mount Shasta, but they sort of think it's like you're sitting there and aliens are running out of portals and there's stuff flying around and stuff. And they don't realize, I think, that number one, it's very dark, it's very cold. You're camping out. It's not a party type of atmosphere. It's almost like somebody described it as being like a monk, and you're raising this consciousness. So you went through that. And I think you're sort of pointing this out, that everybody there, you don't realize that you're going through these meditation practices and mantras and Kundalini and raising vibration, and that a lot of the weekend is this kind of practice. So maybe speak a little bit to that, what you were doing for Enrique. And have you done that for the last couple of years, for the 4 years that you?
No, I've been wanting to. I led a mantra a couple of years ago. It's just whenever he was kind of fishing around, he was looking like, hey, tell me about that Kundalini. What do? You want to do it? And I've been wanting to, but I never want to interfere with him and what he has going on. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I was so attracted to Rama from the very start, from the very get-go, is that they're a very spiritual-based community of people. They're working with the mantras. Kundalini is very mantra-oriented, and meditations and all of that. So that's what drew me there in the first place. It's right up my alley. And so when Enrique asked me to do that, that's been a favorite practice of mine this year. I did that one for 40 days. You really absorb the teachings of the practice when you do it consistently like that. So that's the one I wanted to teach, but that one is a really powerful one. To conquer one's imagined disabilities, seen and unseen, right? So we're talking about the conscious and the subconscious mind. And, people can sit on a couch for years and talk about all their issues and do therapy that way. But another powerful way to really clear the field and be that warrior on a mission, you got to clear all the emotions and the mind stuff, because a lot of that stuff just isn't true. Mm-hmm. And the best way to clear that is through the breath. Do a really powerful breath practice. And so that was a simple, easy one, 3 steps. Everybody can do it. And I think that had an effect. I had a lot of people come up to me over the course of the rest of the weekend on that one.
Although I found that it was a little bit exhausting if you've not done it before. Because the first thing I was thinking when you were sitting there is I was thinking, wonder how long she can sit in that position until she has to get it. because you seemed like you're right into it. Like you got into the position, and everybody else is sort of struggling to get on the ground. You know?
Yeah, I know. Well, I go numb. My right leg goes numb. I do a mantra class on Sundays, and it takes me a while to shake the right leg out. I'm just like everybody else. You know, when you first start doing it, and even myself, when I first started doing that one practice, it's a 3 minutes per set. So there's 3 parts. I would do 1 minute each because I was winded and getting dizzy and sweating, you know. But what happens is when you build the pranic energy in you, you will quickly, within a week, become very strong in it, and you become fierce. You know, when you're you're really getting into it. I mean, you're channeling it.
Yeah.
In what do they? I don't know if it's quantum physics, but energy cannot be destroyed, right?
Yeah.
Energy is energy. And so we have these lower states of energy, depression, anxiety, fears, worry, whatever. It's in there. But how do we pull it out, and how do we transmute it and raise it to serve us in a higher way, right? So it's a great way to clear all that out so that we can be really laser focused on our lives and accomplish what it is that we're here to do.
Wow. I was really impressed. It seemed like you had been at this your whole life in terms of the knowledge and the understanding, because I had sort of an experience where I was sort of woken up, but I was very impressed with and even your understanding of consciousness and energy and how it all fits together. So let me ask you about you had being experiences in your room when you were very young and this sort of thing. There's a big discussion, and I think I know where you'll go with this, in terms of good aliens, evil aliens. Who are we dealing with? So go to that in terms of how do you see what are we actually dealing with here? And is it us? Is it are we part of them, or how does this all fit together? Because you'll know that now in this separation world that people are pushing, you know, national security, and these are bad guys, and they're interfering with our airspace and our lives and stuff. So can you talk a little bit about your experience over your life as to how you think this all fits together?
Okay, so over the life, we'll say when I was a little girl, I was terrified. Oh, they could come and get us anytime. You know, that scared me. But where I'm at now, the way we're evolving as a species on this planet, we're moving from duality to unity. We're always evolving and expanding, right? We're always in a state of change and flux. My thought about the evil alien agenda, you know, good versus bad, I believe that we're all one. I think that we're all one consciousness. And that's why when we go into meditative states and we set intent, we're already in communication. We're in communication in dream state, in awake state, theta, beta, alpha, whatever. We are all communicating. I could think a thought about you, Grant, and you're on the other side of the world, and you're going to get a hit, and all of a sudden you're thinking about me, but you don't know why.
Yeah.
We're all connected.
Yeah.
So when you start with that backdrop and you look at good versus bad, evil versus good, okay, this planet is housing polarities, duality, okay? The higher I rise, the stronger the negative forces, right? It's just a part of the way that we're all set up. What I think about the negative alien stuff, I really believe that my perception of this experience, what's out here, is a reflection of what's in here. So the more that my consciousness is steeped in duality, the more I'm going to perceive my external experience in duality. If I'm living in unity consciousness in my mind, there is no good versus bad, evil, and, you know, loving intended. So it's a matter of the individual perception and where you're developed. That's my take on it. That's without diminishing what other people are saying, because that's where they're at. They're living in a dualistic world and they're experiencing that internally, and that's what they're perceiving.
Yeah.
So I try to stay really neutral and open to all of it and be non-reactive. Loving, keep the heart open. I want to hear everybody's viewpoint on it, but I also don't think it serves me or this world if I'm living in fear. And it's very easy to get into fear states. And I did, after I got out of Kundalini school, I went for 10 months. And when I finished, I took the biggest, deepest dive into YouTube to figure out what everybody was doing and saying and learning. And I wanted to know about everybody. And I found myself in some fear. And that's so unnatural for my state of being. And I was talking to my friends about it, but I'm like, I'm afraid. I don't know, if I should go in the woods alone. Like, what is the biggest fear the human has? Is a fear of dying.
Yeah.
But I just believe that if I keep the frequency high, if we're working in groups that are keeping the frequencies high, we're in a state of love, in a state of unity consciousness. I've never had a negative experience, not one. And I know Dr. Greer and his camp, they've been doing it almost 30 years. There's never been a negative report. None of the other teams and the people that I've worked with around the world have ever had a negative experience. But it takes courage, if you're standing in front of a shadow being, to stay present to it. If you're standing in front of a giant orb or a spaceship or a being, we're training ourselves out in the field to hold that loving space without that pushback, ego, fear reaction. Right? That's a instinctual thing that was built inside of us for survival. And we're learning to find that common ground. So that's my take on the evil alien. Does that answer that?
Yeah. It's very well. I mean, and again, I think you have that's exactly the way I would describe it. You have this sort of like the wisdom that you've picked up, this thing of duality versus separation, which is part of a download that I got. It's like you either see the world as separation, which gives you one world, but if you see world as unity, then it's a completely different world. Everything changes, and that's what people don't realize. You mentioned the tea leaf thing with the that you are sort of like the alien that goes into the oneness thing. Do you think there is you're part of a mission? Do you think you're part of working with another species to help elevate the consciousness of the world? Do you see yourself on a mission?
I definitely see myself on a mission. Yeah, I had a dream in my 20s during that really crazy time. I don't think it was a dream, though. I think it was an out-of-body travel. I actually met up with a group of people, and we had these little space pods that we were in.
Okay.
I went to a different part of the world. We gathered, all these people came together and we talked about this mission and how important it was and how imperative it was that we all followed through. And I don't know anything more about that, but it left me with a feeling inside of me that there is some reason why I'm here, and it's so big. It's not just me. I'm just one person out of billions of people, but that's how it felt inside of me. Having a little bit of a challenging upbringing and not have, my mom had some substance abuse issues and no dad. I was kind of on my own. And it seems kind of crazy based on where I was as a child, but I had that yearning inside of me and wanting to make a difference in the world and knowing that the world needed people. It needed something at this time to get it to where it was going. And it didn't make any sense to me at the time, but definitely feel a strong mission. And I've been doing this contact work for 6 years, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. And I think it's really exciting and wonderful to see so many people around me and around us that's waking up to at least asking questions and wanting to explore. It's nice to see that the institutions are, I don't know what they need to do, but we need to make some radical shifts in our paradigm where this world is right now, but one step at a time. And I think if we're one consciousness, Grant, then the work that I do makes a difference for the whole. The work that you do makes a difference for the whole. And we all have a piece to that puzzle. It's a piece to that work. And we're coming together with like intent. And energetically, we're attracted to the people that are of like mind. And we're building something really beautiful. I think Dr. Greer had an amazing platform, amazing a structure for us to work from. And Rama has a beautiful structure to work from. But I feel right now that there's a new alchemy happening with people. What happened this past weekend on the mountain was really powerful and magical.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said, Kim. Can we go to the mountain then? And what was your experience this last weekend? To me, it seemed like it was kind of slow going until people started talking. Like you sort of assumed nothing was going on, But then when people started telling their stories, then you're going like, whoa, is maybe I'm not, but people were tapped in. And so maybe would you relate what your experience was in 2019 and what you took from it and any experiences you had. And then we can go to this bizarre 2017 event that you were involved in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So 2019, every year is completely different. It is unscripted. We can't base anything from the prior years on what the new year is going to bring, but we know it's going to be amazing. So we're all, excited for this to occur. What I really loved from the minute we all sat down in circle was I felt a powerful sense of cohesion of the group. There wasn't an overriding ego or a dominant personality that needed to pull the energy in a different direction. I've experienced that in the past. We had heart-centered, beautiful, loving people right from the minute we got together. That's important. It really is. Watching Enrique go through his sort of what I would call a dark night of the soul, having stepped away from a community in a sense that he's been connected to his whole life. And it's like him leaving the land and now he's kind of floating around. He hasn't hit the new shore yet, but he shows up honest and raw. I wasn't going to come. I didn't plan anything, and I'm like, what? This is what's going on. This is weird. We don't talk during the year. So I'm like, I hope he's okay. But then you trust, right? You know what? This is all on purpose. And when we went to the wall and we did our meditations, vastly different from the year before, but it was a mirror. It was going in and it was showing me where I was at and the process that I needed to get through in order to be ready for the contact. And that was letting go of my ego, my attachments, who I think I am, and breaking open and getting back to the truth of who I am and functioning from there. Because we all have busy lives and challenges, and you come in and you got to let it go.
And just describe a little bit about the wall. You mentioned the wall. People may not know what you're talking about. You're talking about the doorway?
The door, yeah.
Okay. Maybe explain it a little bit for people who are just tuned in who aren't aware of what we're talking about.
Yeah, so the door is there's a rock wall as you walk down a path at McLeod Falls, and it's middle McLeod Falls. There's upper, middle, and lower. So you don't have to go very long down the path, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. There's a rock face on the left-hand side, and you'll see a carved out shape of a door sort of set in, maybe 6 to 10 inches from the main rock. And it's shaped like a door with moss on it. It's really beautiful. And we went out there last year for the first time, and we chanted the Om mantra as a group to elevate the frequency of the space. And I had no idea what was going on. And Enrique says, just put your head on the door and your hands and do whatever. So I go up. Well, I studied shamanic journeying and intuitive development for 4 years with a shaman teacher in the past. So I'm familiar with journeying. But what happened was I felt an energetic pull, and this is last year. All of a sudden I'm standing on the other side of the door, and it's cold, it's kind of wet, like damp, and it smells different, and there's a path, and it's black on the left, and the path kind of veers around to the right, and there's this huge bridge. It looks like Lord of the Rings bridge. It's all made out of stone, and it looks ancient, kind of has an arch to it. And I'm asking questions, and there's a voice talking to me, sort of off behind here somewhere. And I'm asking, what is this? And the voice says, it's a bridge between worlds. And I said, oh, cool. Okay. So I start to walk that way, and next thing you know, I'm on the bridge, and everybody's gone. There are people walking over the bridge. They're all gone, and I'm going over the bridge, and I come up to a black hole. It looks like a big black tunnel. And I just thought, all right, here I go. And I took a few steps in there, and then I'm like, all right, how long am I going to go on this thing? And can I find my way back and all that? And then all of a sudden I just let go, and I started accelerating down this sort of portal. And I went really fast, light speed, until I see a pin dot of light. And all of a sudden I'm out in the open, and it's mountainous, there's grassy areas, and there's this huge bird flying up in the sky. And so I look at the bird, I connect with what the light source was or anything. And that was the journey. All right. So that was last year. We all wrote our accounts. Ray Dove put it together in a report, which was great, a lot of work. But everybody had an experience and received messages. So the first thing we did this year is we go back to the door, and we all went up at the same time. And the first thing that happens is I feel, it's weird. It's like a feeling. And I go in, I fall into a river, and now it's like lava though, and I'm floating around. I'm kind of discombobulated. I'm hitting things, but then there's a voice. Let go of everything. Let go of who you think you are. Let go of your attachment to money and your fear around this or that. Like, it's just like this whole assessment goes on, and next thing you know, I get down a black hole. I come out the other end, and now I drift to the side, and then everything changes again, and now I'm laying in a field. And I'm laying there, and I'm open, I'm empty, and the sun is shining, and now all of a sudden I start to crack, like an egg cracks in half. I crack all the way open. The shell of my body is laying on the sides, and this incredible ball of light comes out of me and shoots right up to the sky and then permeates over everything. And then the message is, this is the truth of who you are. This is your true nature. So letting go, right? Because the mind is so busy doing things, attaching and fearing and all this. Let it go. This is the truth of who you are. And that, I get chills thinking about it, but that's my takeaway from that very, very first experience at the wall. And then I shared it in the group, but it wasn't just a message for me, it was for everybody. Because if we're going to work together as a group and become one, we have to let go of all that stuff. None of that matters when you die anyways, by the way.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But that was that. And fast forwarding, we build the energy together as we go about our time together. But we fast forward to Saturday night. And what I'm understanding a little bit about this, in my experience, is that there's a window of time. The ET and the mountain beings and the interdimensional beings, whatever is going to come in and have an interaction with us, they're going to come in and we're going to have an experience of some sort, but there's a window because they're dropping their frequency down to come into this dense reality, so to speak. Energetically, we've raised, because we're doing the mantras and the meditation and whatnot. My experience this time, and this will connect in with what we'll talk about in 2017, Marcel had to get up and he had to go back to the tent. And he has a sore Baker's cyst on the back of his leg, and it's dark out. So I got up and said, let me help you walk. I had to go get my glasses anyways. I had seen a couple of flashes going off, so I knew things were happening. I needed my glasses. Jeff Sell quickly walks up to us, and the three of us are holding hands. We're walking together slowly. Jeff goes, I saw some lights flashing over here. I said, so did I. So now we're going up the trail towards the tents, and Marcel and Jeff stop. And they're looking at something, and I take a few steps forward, and I'm literally seeing these billowing energies of light rolling in at me like a fog, but in fast motion, kind of coming in around me. The energy of this accelerated my nervous system. My heart started racing, but it wasn't from my mind. It was like a full body, like hair wanted to stand up. And I saw this sort of form taking place. It was a white crystalline light that was a little bit taller than me, but very narrow, and went all the way down to the ground. And I turned around to look at the guys, and there was another light formation behind me. And I was actually losing sight of everything. Like everything was disappearing as I was in this misted space. And I don't want to say I went into fear, but I always want to somebody knows where I'm at, or, something is happening. And so I started calling Marcel, and he wasn't answering me. And I'm like, so I stopped the experience. I stepped away. I said, come over here. And they both came over, and I said, what are you feeling? And it started re-energizing again. And he's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And he was seeing it and feeling it. And we were there maybe 5 minutes, but then I have this sort of sense that I want to be supportive of Enrique and what's going on in the system. I don't want to pull the experiences away from what we're doing over here in case I'm needed for anything. So I said, I got to go back to my tent and get my glasses. I'm going to walk away from this right now. So I went and got my glasses. He got his stuff. Jeff, I don't know where Jeff went. I get back to my chair, and Enrique, 2 minutes back to sitting down, he's got my coat and he goes, come over here. I want you to feel the energies. And so I got up, went out of the circle. Ray was over there, and it was just outside of our circle. And it was definitely activated, but not like it was in 2017. But what I saw was maybe 3 feet of like a greenish, whitish energy, sort of lava flowing on the ground, in and around the trees and all around us. And there were some swirls of energy moving around. So it definitely, there was something going on there. And he asked me, he says, do you think you could do a cesium crystal activation here? I need to take half the group up the mountain. And I'm like, okay, based on right now, yes. But what I didn't anticipate was over a half hour of people walking around to their tents, flashlights, crunching in the ground, cars moving around, that it totally broke the flow. And I like, oh, and I knew, I'm like, I got to wait for it to get quiet. So I did. And then I went back to the site. I stood there. I was connecting to the energies. It wasn't elevating. It was there, but not like it was. And I just didn't feel confident that it was the right conditions, so to speak. So I had to make that judgment call. Maddie said that she was getting guided to look for the red lights. We were asking for signs. Well, I said, Maddie, let's go walk over to that spot where Marcel and Jeff and I were earlier. So we arm in armed it. We went over there, and I wasn't getting the feeling over there either, but I was seeing some little bit of pin dots of red light going off way off in the distance behind my tent. And we both saw them, but then I'm like, I'm like, let's not do it. If I had Enrique here and one of us could go over there and do the observation and the other one could come back and we can navigate it, then I would have proceeded to see that what was going on. But that was how that went down. And, you know, I thought about it the next day, and I was laying in my tent, and I'm like, how could I have shifted that experience into something else that was dynamic? And what I came up with was, one, we could have just taken the whole group and gone for a walk and just explored. We could have broken up the group in smaller groups and taken off and had an experience that way. Because a lot of times that happens, where you're out there and the energies will start working with you. The other thing was, when I play that bowl, even for a minute, and I opened my eyes, the whole circle was engulfed in a field of energy. And I don't know if you were able to witness that or not, but it was really powerful. And I was thinking the next morning, you know, we should have just held out our hands just to see what would happen, and opened ourselves up to it. But anyways, it was a learning experience, to say the least. And I wrote to Enrique after I came home from that, and I asked him, I said, is this normal? Because I don't know how Rama conducts their work. I've only been with Enrique the last 4 years. And I said, is it normal for you guys to break up the group? You're right. And he said, yeah, they do that a lot. But I said, here's the thing. I think that certain conditions need to be met. And I told him this. I said, one, our circle needs to be away from the campsite. One. And two, I think we should stay together cohesively as a group. Three, somebody needs to hold the space through sound. So the singing bowl is amazing. We don't have to keep chanting all that much, but enough to keep our vibrations high. But that will anchor the space, because, and I'm saying this based on what happened 2 years ago. We were across the field. We were 10, 15-minute hike up. We had about 47 people in circle, and I'm shifting now to 2017. And what occurred there, we sat down in the circle, and I was having some emotional challenges through the process of that weekend. I was having some difficult internal stuff going on in a relationship. And so I saw Maddie off in the distance, and she's standing by a rock and she's staring at the trees. And I'm like, what is she doing over there? So I walked over there and I talked to her, and she's like, look. And when I turned, this whole area of the woods was activated energetically. And that's when I explained I was seeing these cylindrical cone-shaped structures. They were from 3 to 6 feet tall, varying sizes. They were misted energy, and they were along the front line of the trees. And there were sparks of light coming out all over. And I'm like, wow. And sun was setting. And we sat in circle, and Enrique led 2 exercises. One of them was we all stood up and held hands, and he painted scenarios, and he would say, okay, you and you holding hands, you're married. And he would point to a girl across the group, and he would say, now, but you're having an affair with her over there. So everybody had to walk holding hands to that one girl. And then he would paint a scenario over there. And basically we ended up all tangled up. And he was trying to teach us that every choice that we make in this life has an effect on everybody else, because ultimately we're all one, right? And to be very conscious of our lives in that way. And the second exercise was we had to stand face to face, 2 lines facing each other. And we had to look into the person across from us, their eyes. And we had to apologize for anything that we've ever done in this life or any lifetime that has ever hurt them, and to say, I love you, and will you forgive me, and all this stuff. And it brought up so much stuff in me that I started to have a panic attack. And I couldn't even breathe. That's not me. I'm pretty even keel. But I went up to Enrique and I said, I need to cry. I need to go find a tree. I got to get out of here. And he goes, don't go far. Don't go back to the campsite. So I ran off to a tree, and I was on the ground on my knees, and I was sort of I was raging, like coming from a very deep place. I think it was real primal. Shasta can do that to you. It can really pull your stuff out. And I'm crying. And he comes up maybe 5 minutes later, and he picks me up, gives me a hug, and he holds me out here, and he's asking me to role play with him, because it was a father wound that was happening. And so I had to role play with him. And then he asked me, he goes, can you view every part of this situation with love? All of it. And he waited for me to give him the answer he was looking for, which was yes. And then I went back to my chair, and I was a blank slate. Like, I was in complete neutrality. It's getting dark now. Enrique is back in the circle doing some things. Well, what I didn't know was he was looking for me at that point. And he sees me across the circle by the woods doing this in my jacket, right? And I know you heard that part of the story. So he goes over there. It's a little behind the circle. He goes over there, and poof, whatever he saw was gone. But that's also the spot in the trees where Jeff Sell took pictures. And he I don't know if he showed these to you, but it's a V-shaped light formation that was coming in. It was the exact spot where Enrique saw me. So it's getting high strange, right?
Yeah.
And so Enrique gets to the center of the circle, and he goes, Kimberly and Maddie, I want you now. Come here. And I'm in the chair like this, and I'm like, huh? So we go over there, and he said, walk with me. And that's when we walked away, and we had to hang on to each other. There's rocks, and it's uneven ground out there. We go over to the site. It's probably 50 steps away. It's a little bit away. Yeah. And he asks me to step in there, Maddie too. And what do you feel? Well, the temperature was significantly cooler. I stood in the circle, the center of the space, and I looked down, and there's literally these white, huge, crystalline white bands of light swirling around my feet. And as I'm connecting with it, the whole ground filled with these lights. It was something right out of a Disney movie. And there's these sparks of light in the trees that would turn into a ribbon of light that would start swirling around us. So it's in the air, it's on the ground, it's magical. And I am overwhelmed with love and joy. There's no fear here at all. It's like, oh my God. And so he says, Maddie, go get 12 people. I want you to bring them to the space, but don't bring them in. Hold off. I'm going to give Kim, we're going to do this initiation with Kim. So I held my hands out, and these energies were all over the place on my hands. And I'm like, this is the stuff I've seen my whole life. This is the first time in all these years that it had purpose, it had meaning, and I was facilitating with this other person the use of these energies. And it built these beautiful cone-shaped figures on my hands. And when he says they're fully formed, he put them on my heart and pushed in, took 3 breaths. And that's when we saw something in this. He saw it. I saw a flash out of the corner of my eye. Did you see that? Did you see that? And then he looks at his watch and it's 9:08. But that was one of the signs that he received in his automatic writing very early that morning. And so we proceeded to, he brought the 12 people in and he showed me the first couple of people. What do you see? I saw everything he was seeing and I'm like, oh my God, we're doing this. It's game on. And so we proceeded to initiate everybody that came into the circle with us. But what I noticed was towards the end, the energy of the field was going down. And he was noticing it too. And when he would leave, I would get back in the center and I would reconnect with it and ask for expansion and all that. So it would reignite. But you could see that there was a window of time. Now, was it a Zendra? I don't know. I don't know. I think a Zendra is a little bit different, where maybe it's a portal, a place of communication between ET and the people, a space where they're actually going off planet. So I don't think it was necessarily a portal, but it was definitely something I've never experienced before. And I will say, Maddie and I were very supportive of him that weekend, but he didn't have anybody helping him. And we knew that ahead of time. I think Sixto Paz had backed out and whoever else was going to help him. Here he is with 47 people by himself. And so, you know, we're like mother hens. We wrote to him and we're like, Enrique, if you need anything, please ask. We're here to support you and whatever you need. And he was grateful. But in the end, we ended up really working together as a team to make that happen. And that field of light stayed with me for a long time. Even back at my tent. So that was my experience back then. And we're still talking about it.
Yeah. I can add a little bit to that because to me, it was an enlightening experience as well when the field went down. And I related back to what you mentioned is that we sort of think that it's them producing the field and we're just sort of observers, and yet we're raising the vibration. And so when that group broke up, and everybody was getting into cars, and then people started going to their tents, and there was flashlights, and all the mantra stopped. It was completely silent. All these people moving around, everybody's just sitting there waiting for the next event to happen, and that's when the field started to go down. And I remember I follow these stories of Zendras. When I first heard the story of 2014, 2015, I have a guy who's a United 747 airline pilot who I had heard had been in a Zendra, not on Mount Shasta, but near Mount Shasta. He won't tell me where it was, but so I got him with the story, and he said that they had 49 people go through the Zendra. You could take in 7 at a time, and he was in the 7th group that went in. So he was the last group, the 49, 41 through 49 group. And he said that when they were in the Zendra, it started to collapse. It started to fade down, almost like you're describing in 2017. And he said they had to start oming because the group was still outside there, and everybody was keeping the energy up for the Zendra. But once you've been gone through 7 groups, the group starts to think about other things. They're not really doing it anymore. Plus, they're sort of everybody's getting tired of doing it, and the energy starts to drop. And he said they were in this Zendra, and it was starting to collapse on them, and then had to start oming and trying to get this thing to go back up again. So I see it as like this interaction of a oneness type thing, that we are part of the thing. And it made sense that when you broke the group up and everybody just suddenly went to something else, and people were thinking about different things, and all the chanting and the mantra stopped, it would make sense that it would all collapse. And whereas if you were to take the people out of the group, and the groups, the whole mantra thing continues on, and the oming and the bowls and stuff like that, you can move the people out. But once you break the group up, and everything just sort of stops, it's like everybody goes home. And of course, then you guys were trying to bring it back up, and it wouldn't come back up because, it had so far gone that you had a few people who were trying to do it, and you could get it in the circle. But so to me, it was a very learning experience. It was this idea that it's not just them. We're tapped into this thing, and we are helping to produce the field where the ceremony was going to take place.
Yes, absolutely. And you can't pull a rabbit out of the hat if there's no rabbit in there.
Yeah.
And you have to be honest in the moment to say this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And I just felt disappointed. Like I was so excited for this, but there was also in the group, another one of the guys in your circle was super disappointed he didn't get to go up on the mountain. Well, that shift in energy affects everybody.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that disappointment or that frustration or whatever he was feeling, that we didn't know, but as intuitives, you can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel when it's there, when it's game on, and you can feel when there's nothing there. And so, yeah, it was a huge learning experience for me personally, and I know for everybody. That we all learned something through that. And Enrique, you know, his response to me was he'd really like to do a Zoom session with us to discuss, you know, moving in a new direction, and taking the things that aren't working and toss them out and keep doing the things that are working, so that we're continuing to propel forward in our understanding this and our experiences.
Yeah. I think we did learn some stuff. I mean, in terms of, you know, the discussion they had upon the mountain, and as you remember, they sort of was described like a failure, but I just interviewed Jeff last night. And when you hear him describe it, there's no failure. I mean, they went up. It is exactly what occurred. Dramatic encounter when they left the group up on the mountain. So, you know, now we know principles about who gets picked, because that's the whole thing. You take 10 people up on the mountain, and when Enrique gets a vision that it's only going to be 2 people, one has the experience and one's the support, and you have to figure out a way. How do you figure out who it is? And I think a lot of people thought it was Mario because he was having, you know, the visions and stuff like that. But you got to go through that and figure it out. It's a learning experience. It's not like you can get it all right. And in the end, I think it still worked out well in terms of all the things that happened, because there was a lot of bizarre experiences that you didn't learn until you had that sharing experience where I went, whoa, it's like, well, you know, these people had this experience and that experience. And it was like it was more dramatic than my 2017 experience, where there was one very dramatic experience, but this one, it was like a lot of people that were in touch and were in tune with what was going on. People like you and Maddie and Mario and Enrique and Jeff and, you know, Fahid. And there was a lot of people who were having these very dramatic experiences. And luckily you have this sharing thing where people get to tell the story, and then you realize like, wow, there's actually stuff going on here.
Yes. It's the excitement of the high strangeness that keeps us coming back.
Yeah. And so was there anything else that happened in terms of your events? You and Maddie were working together, and I appreciate that, where you're sort of like helping, where you're sort of like when Enrique leaves to go up to the mountain, you and Maddie took over and we're running that. So it's almost like you could sort of run your own little group now, and
I know.
You've learned through a lot of that stuff.
Well, Enrique, you know, he made a comment, you guys don't need me now, you're good. You can and it's like, oh no, brother, we're not doing it without you. In the idea that he actually entrusted me, and I can only speak for myself, but to just throw us out there and say, you guys got this. And I'm like, no, you know, no, I don't, I'm learning. But it tells me a lot about him as a teacher. To let people develop in that way. And that's really beautiful. I'm learning so much every single time. And I take it to heart. I want to learn from this, and I want to get better and stronger in these experiences, so that, you know, we can continue to guide people and continue the love. That's the most beautiful thing. I mean, I think one of the diseases that humanity is suffering so intensely from is feeling separate, feeling really alone. You can have all the clothes, the cars, the money, and all the fun bells and whistles, but are you really feeling that deeper connection to your world and to your fellow humans? And that's what we get when we come together like that. We hold hands and we do the mantras and meditations. We pray for the earth. We pray for each other. There's a lot of hugging. There's tears. There's support. And I feel like that's our primal need, is to show up for each other that way.
Well said. I mean, that's where I think you're very, very wise, because you come to the same conclusion as me. I always say, if there is such a thing as evil in the world, it comes from the belief in separation. There is only separation and oneness. And once you start believing you're separate, everything starts going downhill. It's like everything that goes wrong, you can tie it right back to separation. If you believe that you are one with everything, how can you steal? How can you kill? How can you do all the things that people would consider negative? It's just that you believe that you're separate, your ego and you and me are separate, and I'm the good guy and you're the bad person. And so you're very wise in terms of having picked up. I think that is the basic message of it all, and that's where you get the Rama thing, where people, I guess, people who will hear this, who are into the Shasta thing, have to realize it's not just aliens and lights flying around in the sky. It is this bigger idea of understanding what's actually going on in terms of reality.
That's right. That's right. And they're not, our friends above are not interested in putting on a show.
Yeah.
Just because we do a few poodle tricks down here doesn't mean that they're going to give us what we're looking for. They're going to show up in a way that's teaching us and helping us to evolve without interfering with free will. And
yeah,
so we're going to get an experience for what we're ready to handle. Yeah.
Wow. So okay, so let's sort of shut it down, and let me ask you about Michigan, your work that you do there. Can you talk a little bit about that and the CE5? Do you have a group there that people, say if somebody in Michigan is listening and they kind of think they would like to try this out, is there any way they can do something in terms of what we were doing at Mount Shasta in Michigan?
Yes. Okay, well, Mount Shasta is at a higher elevation, so it's a different experience up there. But yeah, by day, I'm a hairdresser. I have 2 daughters. I do massage. I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher. I'm very busy managing my 2 daughters. But the CE5, I've been engaging in here in the Brighton community for probably the last 5 years. Marcel and I have been collaborating the last 4 years. And so in the winter months when it's colder, I do gatherings at my home, and we talk about consciousness and disclosure and experiences that we're having. Marcel loves to show his video that he takes. He does a lot of trips with Greer. So we do that during the colder months, and then in the warmer months we do the Skywatch events. And I have a CE5 Brighton page on Facebook. Anybody can private message me on there. I also have a meetup group page, and that's UFO Human Initiated Contact. That's what that's under. So I have about 50 people on that are all showing interest in coming. We're actually going to put together a sky watch. We were looking at September 14th for our next event, but it's going to be a full moon. So I'd rather have it be on a new moon cycle. So we're looking at possibly the 28th, but I'm going to do another one. We're going to just throw it out there to everybody on the meetup page and on my email list. My email is kimporth@gmail.com. So if somebody wants to email me, they can, and I'll make sure they get on the email list for future events. But that's what we're doing here. We just did, I was able to facilitate a 3-day event in Wisconsin for a gal named Melissa Kane. She's on Facebook. She's actually helping volunteer with Paula Harris for the Star Wars conference, so you'll probably meet her if you haven't already. But I was able to facilitate that 3-day event, and what was really cool is I was able to insert some Kundalini in there.
Wow.
And have some discussion about consciousness development, because I feel like we need to start doing that. So I like to integrate that into our Skywatch events here in Michigan. And Ricky Butterfast comes here whenever we host events. He flies in from Colorado. He's a senior CSETI ambassador for Dr. Greer. He's been around a long time and has a lot of wisdom. So that's what we've been doing here in Michigan.
Wow. Well, it's been an honor to talk to you. You're one of the more aware people I've ever talked to in terms of understanding. I go down that same consciousness thing and saying, and you answered all the questions exactly the way they should be answered. And so I'm honored to have talked to you, and hopefully we can do something again. Hopefully you can show up like I have my little session on Saturday. These people who want to sort of interact with these are experiencers who have maybe done C5 someplace, whatever, but hopefully you can share your wisdom with them. And
yeah, I'll be there.
It's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you. And I'm going to talk to Marcel right away. So if you have any secret questions you need me to ask him, well,
Marcel is going to bring a whole nother hue into this story. He's such a great person to partner with because whatever I'm skillful with, he's got the other side of it. He's yang and I'm yin, you know. It's like
Yeah.
it's nice to have that because it appeals to everybody. You know,
Yeah.
the scientific minded people and the consciousness minded people were kind of coming from all directions. So
Yeah.
you enjoy
Wow.
your conversation with them. But
Beautiful. I appreciate it. And again, I mean, I'm in your camp with the consciousness thing. I made my shift in 2012. People thought I'd sort of gotten crazy, and I sort of said, well, no, I sort of was teleported there. I didn't really choose to go to consciousness, but
yeah.
I had it through an experience, and you have it through a lifetime of your experience. And I really appreciate your sharing with me and with the people who might be listening to this, your message, because I think it is the message people have to listen to. Wherever you are, this is what it's about. It's all about oneness. It's about love. It's about consciousness. It's understanding how the world actually works, and it's not the nuts and bolts. It's not the money. It's not all this kind of stuff. And you're on the right path. So I really appreciate your sharing with me.
Well, thank you so much, Grant. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.